I have an image that I use. I call it the super glue method. And when I have an intention about what it is, including doing this program, when I have an intention about making this program a reality, and it involves a lot of money and a lot of expense, a lot of people, a lot of things have to come together. It involves going over into my writing space every single day, never giving up on it. Even if I don't feel like writing, 4 or 5 hours every single day, because I superglue my intention into my imagination. And I don't allow anybody else's opinions to do anything to distract from that. I don't care if they tell me I can't do it, or if it's impossible, or it'll cost too much, or we can't do it. My intentions are superglued there. And I have that do not disturb sign placed on my imagination, and it is mine. One of my great teachers in my life in my early doctoral years was Dr. Abraham Maslow. He said, become independent of the good opinion of other people. Trust yourself. Subjective attentions. You, and only you, capital Y-O-U, are the subject that impacts the burning desire in your imagination. You are living and feeling as if your future dreams are a present fact. Use this. Don't allow anybody else's opinions. Don't allow what it says on the internet. Don't allow the research. Don't allow what anybody out there tells you is possible or not possible for you. That when you keep your attention on what you don't want is what will keep manifesting into your life. Addictions have been described as never getting enough of what you don't want or what you despise. So we keep our attention on what we don't want, and what we don't want is what we keep seeking after, and then we despise it. When we put our attention on what we do want, when we shift to a place called unconditional love, and begin to view it as something that I don't have to be dependent upon, you can shift right out of it. The currency for attracting what we want into our lives is our thoughts. As you think, so shall you be. Begin to place them on what it is that you want, and you'll start seeing it shift over and over again. And people who are terrific at getting what they want, you start getting inside of their head and say, what do you think like? How are you organized in here? And you know what they always say? I never, ever allow my thoughts on anything that I don't want. And no matter who out there is saying, yes, but you can't do this. Yes, but you can't do that. I never allow that kind of energy. I shift away from that energy instantly. That's what separates great masters from ordinary human awareness. I have been talking during this program about a consciousness, an awareness, a level of functioning or living or thinking which involves something that I call spirituality. It isn't restricted in any religious way. It is a divine intelligence, an organizing intelligence that is everywhere at once. Some people call it God. Some people call it soul. Some call it spirit. Back in the times of slavery, there was a young man. His name was John Newton. He was 23 years old. And he had what is called in Japanese it's called, excuse my Japanese, but it's called satori. I'd love to say that. Satori, S-A-T-O-R-I. And it means instant awakening. The idea that you can create something in your life now. In Zen, they have a proverb that says, when the student is ready, the teachers will appear. So it's just being ready. And so you don't have to go through this long, involved process to get to enlightenment where you get it 5 minutes before you die. Instead, you can have it when you are ready. Wisdom is avoiding all thoughts which weaken you. You know, every thought has an energy, just like everything else in the universe. And if you have a thought of shame, it will weaken your muscles. And what is your heart but a muscle? If you raise a child who believe in shame and feel ashamed of themselves, every time they think that shameful thought, they will be weakened. And if you have a thought of fear, and if you have a thought of stress, and you have a thought of anguish and anxiety, all of these thoughts and many more are the thoughts that will always weaken you. When you are having a thought that you know is disempowering you, shift it. Shift it to one that is empowering, rather than disempowering. And the thoughts that empower are thoughts of neutrality and willingness and love, and ultimately thoughts of divinity. And when you see a troubled person who is out there struggling at the highest level of unity consciousness or God consciousness, or spiritual consciousness, you recognize yourself in all that you see. There, but for the grace of God, go I. And I am connected to that person. Changing your thoughts. It's what you expect. It's what you think about that expands. It's what Emerson taught us. Ancestor to every action is a thought. Whatever choice you make in every interaction you have, make the choice to be at peace, your sacred or higher self says. Whereas your ego says, oh, no. It's much more important to be right. And so we find people in relationships struggling a lot. And one of the things that they struggle about is who's right and who's wrong. Most of the fights that you have in your relationships really basically, oftentimes you forget the details. But it's basically about who's right and who's wrong. So that if you want to have your higher or your sacred part of you ruling in your life, I suggest this to you. Practice being kind rather than right. When you have the choice, and you have the choice in your relationships with your spouse and your ex-spouse, with your parents, with your grandparents, with your in-laws, with strangers on the freeway, with flight attendants, with waiters, with whomever you interact, if you can just subdue this ego part of you which says, it's important for me to be right, which will introduce you to stress and anxiety and fear and so much of the stuff that I talked about earlier, and instead say, how can I suspend this part of me and allow the part of me that wants to be at peace, that wants to be happy, that wants to be fulfilled. And if I said to you, I'm going to give you a magic wand, and with this magic wand, I am going to allow you to just wave it and get anything that you want. Whatever you want. You can have this, you can have this car, you can have these nice clothes over here, you can have this home, whatever it is. Or I said to you, in lieu of that, I'm going to give you another wand, and you can wave this, and for every moment for the rest of your life, you'll be at peace. Whatever comes along, you'll be able to choose peace. And basically, we know that we're only here for a very short time. And being able to choose peace, which is what the sacred part of you begs you, the higher self. Once you get that, you begin to shift away, and you stop telling yourself that the people who are close to me, in relationship with me, are the people who don't belong there. I remember my wife and I, we often talk about this, and we've been together a long time. We've had many children together, and we have a very wonderful, loving relationship. Thank you. But we'd often, and one time I said to her, or she said to me, you know, we love each other, but this doesn't sound like love. Sometimes the way we talk to each other doesn't sound like love. Let's practice with each other, being kind rather than being right. And it was transformative that when we had that walk. And doing that with your children, and doing that with a waiter. I mean, a waiter who comes to you and is like, you know, hassled and frazzled and has been busy and all of that, and your ego says, wait a minute, I'm here and I'm important, and I have a right to be served, and I have a right to be served now. That's the ego part of you. If you can suspend that and say, you know, you are a lucky man tonight. You got somebody who's dealing from his sacred self. And I understand. And you take your time, and you come to me, and you bring it at your convenience, whenever you can. I'm willing to suspend and you know what? You'll get served so fast and with such gratitude just for being kind, if you practice it. Every single one of us are in relationship, whether it's with our husbands and wives, with our ex-husbands and wives, with our children, our grandchildren, whether it's with people we drive along the freeway next to, whether it's with waiters and waitresses or baggage handlers or flight attendants or people that we are in line to get into the movie. We're all in relationships, and we interact with each other all the time. And probably the best lesson that I've ever learned in my life about how to be in a relationship in a way which is powerful and happy and fulfilling is to remember this sentence. When you have a choice, and you always do, to be right or to be kind, start picking kind. The ego part of us wants to be right. How dare you not serve me as fast as I think I deserve to be served? How dare you say something to me? And immediately we want to make that other person wrong and make ourselves right. But there's a part of each one of us that wants to be happy, wants to be at peace. And that part of us says, it doesn't matter whether you're right. It doesn't matter about your ego. All you want is to be at peace, so pick kind. This kind of an attitude, if we had more of this, not only in our own personal lives, would we improve virtually every relationship we have with all of the people closest to us and all of the strangers we interact with, but on our planet as well, we would begin to understand the wisdom that on a round planet, there's no choosing up sides, that we're all one. We're all breathing the same air. We're all drinking the same water. We're all being warmed by the same sun. And as they say, as the Native Americans used to say, no tree has branches so foolish as to fight among themselves. It applies in your relationships, and it applies as a people as well. You begin to sense there's trouble ahead. And so you look at a group of people that are standing on a corner and you think that could be trouble. And your intuition says, run around them rather than next to them. And you run and you avoid that. And something tells you when you're walking out of a parking lot, there's some intuitive sense that says, I think I should have somebody accompany me when I'm doing this. And you listen to that intuition. Sometimes it isn't there and it's not necessary. When it's there, you pay attention. You begin, synchronicity isn't any more confusing than the thought that exists between a mother and her baby. It's not any more difficult to understand than the idea of a remote control in your television set. And when we then have these synchronistic events in which we access our intuition, and what I'm suggesting is that when you reach these higher frequencies, intuition, insight, creativity, all of these things become negotiable. You can access them. You have the knowing. Because when you form a picture in your head of what you would like to attract into your life, you can begin to attract abundance and virtually anything else that you put your attention on. It's a law of the universe. Get that picture. See yourself as if you already are what you'd like to become. And every great artist, every great thinker is able to do just that. They have been able to see themselves as completing something. Do you know how difficult it is for so many people who get into a doctoral program? I think the statistics are that out of every 10 people admitted into a PhD program, 1 completes it. 9 out of 10 never complete it because they can't picture themselves writing a dissertation. The reason that I knew when I entered a doctoral program and was told that 9 out of 10 don't complete it, I already saw myself as having my doctorate. And I just knew that that was something that I had to do. And I suggest that there are people right in here, there are physicians in here, who probably entered medical school. There's a lady right here in the front who entered medical school. How many women who enter medical school complete the entire process and become medical doctors and have a practice? It's getting higher, but the statistics are against you as you enter something like that. But if you see yourself as having a practice, you see yourself as a healer, you see yourself as someone who is capable of becoming a doctor, or anything else in your life, if you see it and get that picture, and I can't tell you, I try to teach this to my children, my daughter who wants to sing, I just said, sing. See yourself as a singer. Get that picture, and no matter what comes your way, don't ever let anybody ever tell you that it won't happen. You can let them tell you, and all you have to do is use that as a way to step into the gap and then out of the gap over here into the world of spirit and bring that energy of knowing, that energy of insight, that energy of intuition. Are you listening, Jennifer? Because if you have that picture, there's nothing that can stop you.
And you don't evaluate whether or not you are successful on the basis of whether people buy your CDs. That's the biggest mistake you could make. Or whether people read your books. Or whether people want to come and hear your lectures or buy your tapes. You don't do it that way. You evaluate whether or not you are a success by being one of those people who's on the road that's hardly ever crowded and enjoying everything that they do because they're seeing themselves as someone who couldn't be any place else. And you no longer find enlightenment through suffering. You no longer find enlightenment through having an awareness in the moment of what it is that you need to do to learn the lesson that's happening for you right now. You are now a person who's out in front of yourself, and you see it coming. And that makes you a master who lives coincidences, not in the sense of them being accidents, but having a perfect fit.
I think the most important thing that you can get out of this is to understand that you are a choice-making individual, and that all of the conditions that you find yourself in your life, all of the circumstances of your life, all of the emotional reactions that you have to all of the people and all of the things and events and so on that take place in your life are really choices. And that's a very difficult thing for a lot of people to get, because they're raised to believe that I can't help the way I feel. I have a right to be miserable when somebody treats me in a certain way. I can't help it. I've always been that way. It's just my nature. It's just the kind of person that I am.
This waiter was directly from Italy and was serving this wonderful pasta and all of these things. And he was a madman. He was a maniac. Every customer was getting him all upset. He would talk to the other head waiters and running back and forth and getting himself all worked up. Finally, I said, come on over here. He said, what are you doing this for? I do this all the time. You do therapy wherever you go, right? I said, what are you taking this so serious? All you're doing is serving spaghetti. It's no big deal. I said to him, you know, before you're 50 years old, you're going to have a heart attack. Guarantee it, if you continue to behave that way every day. He said, look, what do you expect from me? I'm Italian. So, well, that explains it. I mean, his rationale for his behavior was, I can't do anything about it, I inherited it. You know? I just got deficient anger genes. I mean, I've heard kids say that, you know, when they're failing math. I can't help it. My father was lousy at math, my grandfather was lousy. I inherited, you know, deficient math genes. It's just not my fault. I can't do anything about it. The fact is that anything that goes on inside of you that is immobilizing, that gets in your way, that keeps you from functioning in the ways that you would like to function, that stops you from reaching your goals, whatever they may be in your life, anything inside, you choose. It's yours. You own it all. And if you don't like anything about yourself, anything, are you shy? Are you nervous? Are you afraid? Are you somebody who can't handle getting up in front of groups because it scares you? Are you someone who gets angry too much? Do you find yourself being manipulated and controlled by other people too often? Are you afraid to stand up for what you believe? Are you a terrible cook? Are you lousy at tennis? You haven't got a backhand? Whatever it may be, it doesn't make any difference. You are the sum total of the choices that you make in your life. If you don't buy that, if you buy into another system, which a lot of psychologists will teach you, which is, it's in your unconscious. You can't help it. After all, you're a middle child. What do you expect from a middle child? You know, certainly can't have any identity of your own. Or maybe you're an only child. Oh, God. Maybe you're the youngest of 12. You had 11 parents, you know, all your life. Somebody telling you what to do from the time or maybe you were the oldest and you had to be a parent for 9 others or whatever. You can use any excuse that you want, or you can just say, the devil made me do it, or it's God's fault. You know, a lot of people blame God. God and mother are most responsible for all of the things that are wrong with us, you know. The classic, the one I heard over and over and over again in all the years, and I announced it on network television one night, you know. I said, I came here tonight for one reason. I want to tell everybody in America that your mother liked your sister better. I heard it every day for 20 years, you know, it must be true. I can't do it. My mother liked my sister better. No wonder I can't. She was the one that got all the attention. I didn't get anything. Her pictures and all the photographs. Nothing for me. I know some of you don't have a sister and you think, well, then that's not the reason. She wanted one. Really. And she would have liked her better. I guarantee it, you know. It's taking responsibility for everything that goes on in your life, which is what Wayne Dyer is about, if you really want to take it home to anybody else. No blame is allowed for anything that goes on in your life. Virtually everything in your life boils down to what kinds of attitudes, what kinds of beliefs do you have about any given situation. You try to set your expectations in such a way so that you understand that your life is nothing more than a series of choices.
So if we begin to shift our statements, the statements first of all that we say to ourselves, and then the statements that we say, because and so what I want everybody who's listening today to do is to take a look at all of the things in your life that you don't like, that aren't working the way you would like them to work, whether it's in your relationships, whether it's financial, whether it's with your health, whether with your job, with your friendships, or whatever it might be. And instead of saying, and when you ask yourself, now, how did it come to be this way? Kind of go back and go all the way back as far as you can go to even being a young boy or a young girl. And how many times have you heard or said the words that were predictive of this showing up in your life? And then get to a place where you start to change that around. And you have not only a different set of expectations, but a different way of making decrees, so that you decree that things are going to work out, that your prosperity is on its way, that your relationship is going to improve, that your health is something that you have control over. I'll give you an example of this, and then we'll open up to the phones. My daughter Serena is here, who's written a book called Don't Die With Your Music Still In You. It's a book that I give out on the show to people who call in, my experience growing up with spiritual parents. And she has a new little baby. Her baby's name is Sailor, and Sailor is 3 months old. Now, Sailor has something called acid reflux, that so that her stomach, so when she's nursing or when she gets her bottle or whatever it is, she starts throwing up a lot. Now, my daughter Serena has had this her entire lifetime, from the time that she was a little girl, and her mother, my wife, also had that when she was a young girl. It's this thing called acid reflux, okay? And they have little prescriptions for it, Prilosec and things like that people take. It's sort of predictive of what Serena has experienced for herself in her whole life. So I said to her yesterday, I said, honey, do you realize that that little baby who came out of you shares your DNA and shares your blood, and is as, just because the cord has been cut, but is just as connected to you, spiritually and metaphysically and mentally, is just as connected to you as if she were inside of your womb, and that you had this experience yourself. And rather than already setting up this decree that Sailor's going to have this, is just something she's going to have to struggle with. My mother had it. She has, I had it, and now she's going to have it. I said, you have the capacity to communicate with her and begin to program into her subconscious mind from the time that she, and every time you look at her and see her, she can, when you look at her, she looks at you different than anybody else, because you're her mother, and she looks into your eyes and all that. And instead of telling her that you have acid reflux and I'm really sorry, I'm going to give you more milk than you need and you're going to have this for a lifetime, I said, you have the power to heal this. To put your hand on her stomach and on her throat, and when she's taking this, instead of convincing yourself that this child is going to have this for a lifetime, I want you to begin to just say to yourself, I can heal this for you, honey. And talk to her like this. And I put my hand on her stomach and I said, you're such a sweet baby, and you don't have to have this throwing up stuff, and you don't have anything called acid reflux. You're perfectly healthy. You're a divine creation. You are perfect. Mommy's going to be here for you and show you exactly how to deal with this, and start programming her subconscious mind right now, so that when words do begin to develop within her, and she speaks first in words and then in sentences, what you're going to say is that you don't have this. This is just a minor little obstacle, and it's not anything that's going to dominate your life. And read your sister's book, Goodbye Bumps, because she was able to do the very same thing by shifting her consciousness around. So, we get programmed from the time that we're little, about what we can do and what we can't do, how fast we can run, how much we can lift, how athletic that we are, how good we are at mathematics, how, whether or not we're coordinated, whether we can dance, whether we can do a headstand, whether we get, it's just that almost every few minutes of our life, there are these decrees coming out of us. And you don't want to have any decree coming out of you that isn't predictive of what you would like to attract and create for yourself, versus a decree that says, it's going to be difficult, I can't make it happen, my luck is never going to work out, I've been sick, this runs in our family, my mother had it, my grandmother had it, and on and on and on and on it goes. So many people are consumed by their past and living as if the things that happen to them in their life are the reasons why their life isn't going the way they would like it to go today. I'd like to suggest to you that in this principle, which I call giving up your personal history, I'd like to suggest to you that all of that is wonderful to talk about in therapy, and you can get a lot of help literally for going back and examining the things in your past that perhaps are troubling for you. But the illusion is that these are the things or the reasons why your life is not working the way you would like it to work today. That is the illusion. It's the illusion that Alan Watts spoke about when he used the metaphor of the wake of the boat. That the wake of a boat is nothing more than the trail that is left behind. If you stand on the back of a speedboat and watch it, it's a wonderful metaphor. You can get that picture in your head. You can simply see how it is all just a trail that is left behind. And if you ask yourself, what's driving the boat? What's making it go forward? The answer is that what's making it go forward is the present moment energy that is being generated by the engine in this moment, now. And that's the only thing that can make the boat go forward. And the most important question to ask yourself about this little metaphor is it possible for the wake to drive the boat? Can a wake, that is, can a trail that is left behind make a boat go forward? And of course the answer to that is no, and thus it is also true for your life. That the wake of your life is also a trail that is left behind. And this trail that is left behind is just that. It is not what is making you inefficient, poor, unhappy, depressed, stressful, sick, in bad relationships, and so on. Even though we like to think that, and we like to put the responsibility for those things on all of these events that took place in our past, the fact is, the way I look at the past, is that everything that happened to us in the past had to happen in order for us to be where we are today. And the evidence that I have for that is that it did. And there's nothing else to say about it. It did, and it can't be undone. 1,000 years ago, a man named Omar Khayyam, who was a tent maker in the Muslim world, observed, "The moving finger writes, and having writ, moves on. Nor all thy piety nor wit can lure it back to cancel half a line, nor all thy tears wash out one word of it. He knew that in the Middle Ages. And yet we've got people who are consumed with the belief that because of the way you treated me, because of what you said to me, because of how I was abandoned, because of how I was abused, because of how I was ignored, because of my past, that I lived in this particular set of circumstances, or that these are the reasons why my life is not going the way I would like it to go today. And if there's any advice that I think will help you to get onto the extra mile where it's not very crowded, it came to me from a man named Carlos Castaneda, who I was reading something that he had written in a book called The Fire from Within. And he said, one day, I finally realized that I no longer needed a personal history. He said, and just like drinking, I gave it up. And he said that, and only that, has made all the difference in my life. So that all of these things and all of these events that transpired, that took place up until now, all you can do to them is thank you. And I'm talking about all of it. Thank you for abandoning me. Thank you for the abuse. Thank you for the struggles. Thank you for all of it, because it is out of those falls and out of those struggles and all of those difficulties that I generated the energy to propel myself to a higher place. And without those falls, without those struggles, without those difficulties, I wouldn't be able to get to the place I am today.
How you process and perceive yourself is determined not by what other people tell you, as much as you'd like to believe that, but in fact by how you have chosen to process yourself. And what you want to learn how to do right off the bat, at the very beginning, is to understand that disliking yourself, or experiencing self-rejection, or putting yourself down, or finding fault with yourself, or looking at your body and telling yourself all the things about it that you don't like. Like you may be too tall, you might tell yourself that you're too short, you might tell yourself that you're too heavy, that you're too light, that you're any number of things, and you can go through every organ in your body. And some people do this very thing and find all kinds of reasons why they don't like this, they don't like that, they don't like the size of their legs, they don't like the size of their breasts, they don't like the way their hair is, they don't like their eyes, they don't like their ears, their nose is too big. It's an endless. And this is like a burden that you place on yourself in your life, and it's something that you want to really begin to process in a different way. And a way to process it is to say, what do I get out of this? What's the point in me disliking myself or finding fault with myself? It's the only self I have. Instead of doing that and keeping myself miserable, what I'm going to do is look in the mirror and say to myself, this is the body that I have shown up in, for whatever reason, whether it was my plan, or whether it was God's plan, whether it was my parents' plan, whether it was a conspiracy, whatever, it is still the reality. And I am going to accept the reality of what I have shown up in and see it as my curriculum to a higher place. The body that you're in, whether it's in a wheelchair, whether it's blind, whether it's deaf, whether it's tall, whether it's short or black, white, whatever it may be, it is still your curriculum. It's what you have to use to get to the highest place that you want to be in your life. So rejecting it is really rejecting your entire life curriculum. And you have to really look at the whole idea of, in our culture, it's almost, I think I have been asked the question on talk shows across America more about this particular subject than anything else. And the question is, isn't it selfish? Aren't you promoting selfishness? Aren't you telling people that they should love themselves and reject all other people and so on? And I'd like to put that to rest right here. The first thing you have to ask yourself is, what does it mean to be selfish? To be selfish is to be a burden to another human being. Whenever you find yourself a burden to somebody else, or someone else is a burden to you, that is a very selfish act. The person who dislikes himself, believe it or not, is the biggest burden to be around in the world. This is someone who is never happy, doesn't know how to make themselves happy, is using other people to try to get them to be happy, is always blaming other people for the conditions of their life. The person who has self-doubt or self-rejection doesn't know how to enjoy their life. And being around a person who doesn't enjoy their life is burdensome. The person who does love themselves, who feels good about themselves, who, if you ask the question, do you love yourself, there's not even an issue there. There's not even a question involved. It's simply, of course I do. This is me. This is all I have. Of course I love myself. Why wouldn't I? Why would I ever put myself down? It has nothing to do with being conceited or finding fault with other people or making yourself better than anybody else. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the simple notion that in order for me to be happy, I have to love myself. In order to be able to be free from being a burden to somebody else, I have to know how to enjoy my life. If I know how to enjoy my life, it means that I am loving the life that I'm having, and that means I'm loving the body that I'm in. I'm loving the self that I am. And therefore, you will not be a burden to anybody else. The person who loves themselves is never a burden to anyone else unless it's conceit. And conceit is just another form of trying to get other people to pay more attention to you. But if it's just authentic self-acceptance, then it is the most important thing that you can do. And in raising children, nothing is more important in the whole educational environment than self-concept, self-esteem. This is what we're trying to teach all the time to young people, is feel good about yourself. Treat yourself, cherish yourself as a valuable, important, significant, grand, divine creature, as someone who is unique and special in all the world. And feel that way about yourself wherever you go, and carry yourself that way. So you have to say to yourself, they didn't do it to me. I allowed it to happen, and I am no longer willing to allow myself to be immobilized by the rejection that other people or other events or other institutions or whatever it may be may have attempted to impose on me. So what you want to do at this point is if you can see that there are areas of your life in which you are self-rejecting, and identify them and make a commitment to changing them, then you can come up with some specific things that you can do about it. You can begin to discipline yourself to select new responses to others' attempts at making you feel good. When someone says to you, gee, you look really nice today, you can practice, instead of that immediate self-rejecting kind of, oh, it really isn't me, or this is my hairdresser, or whatever. You can just a very simple thank you, or it's nice to know that you appreciate me. Just even if you don't mean it. I mean, just sometimes you have to fake it, but faking it is all right as long as you are practicing a kind of, hey, if someone says to me I look nice, or that I smell good, or that I look nice in this outfit, or that I look younger than I am, or whatever, I'm entitled to that. I'm entitled to a compliment. I'm worth that. You can practice saying things like, I love you, and check out when someone says that back to you, how do you react to that? What is your reaction to that? And accept the I love yous and the caresses and the affection that other people are directing at you as something that is directed towards someone who deserves that, rather than always doubting it and saying, oh, I wonder if he really does that, or I wonder if she really means it, or and all of the doubting kind of things. Of course you would love me. Your attitude, your inner conversation goes, of course you would love me. I'm worth being loved. I'm a valuable person.
Everything, remember, has a dharma. Every creature, every rose, and every human being has a dharma. You're already fulfilling it physically. You're already in the bodies that you were intended to be in. Remember what I said before, it is not about where you are, it's about what direction you're headed. And as long as you know you're heading in the direction of staying here in meaning. Now, this concept of a calling, I wrote a whole book about it. It's called Inspiration, in Spirit. And the subtitle is called Your Ultimate Calling. So I'm going to introduce a word here to help you to identify your calling. And that word is passion. And it doesn't make any difference to me whether that passion has anything to do with making a living, or it's a part of the DOT, the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. What is it that you find passion about? And the only condition I place on it is that it is in alignment with God or with your source. All right? So that your passion, if your passion is about killing other people, for example, if your passion is about stealing, if your passion is about, I often said that there's two ways to have the tallest building in town. One of the ways to have the tallest building in town, always, is to go around and knock down anybody else's building when they start getting taller than yours. So as soon as they get up, if you're at the 44 floors and they get to 43, 44, you just go over and you put some explosives in there and you just blow it up. And you say, I have the tallest building in town. And this is, by the way, our collective ego. This is what we do in our society and in our world, and which is about, if you really want to know my passion and my calling, it's about shifting the entire consciousness of this planet before I leave it. And that's why the film titled The Shift is so significant to me, because I know that if I can get 10 million people to watch that film, The Shift, if I can get 10 million people in America and Canada to watch that film, that we reach something called pi, 3.1416, remember? And if you can get 3.1416% of a population to align, the rest of it's called a critical mass in physics. You reach what is called phase transition. And if you align enough people or electrons or subatomic particles up and align them in a certain way in an energy field, and you reach what they call the 100th monkey, when you reach that point, all the rest of the electrons or the people in that energy field begin to align as well. And we have aligned ourselves collectively with a consciousness that allows for people to knock down other people's buildings. The other way to have the tallest building in town is to always work on your own building and not be concerned with anybody else's building or what anyone else out there is doing, or being consumed with trying to compete with or win or defend. To listen to your calling. So your calling is the thing within you that has your attention, that has your passionate attention. And it doesn't make any difference whether it makes sense to anybody else. It's the thing that you feel inside of you that you're here for. It's Mr. Holland in Mr. Holland's opus. And here's the secret, here's the thing that I learned. That it's the presence of the passion. That when you have the presence of the passion within you for what it is that you feel is your calling, everything else will take care of itself. That is an indication that you have God within you and guiding you. The word enthusiasm and theos, iasm, translates to the God within in Greek. The God within. When you are enthusiastic about something, anything, when you have that kind of internal knowing that this is what I'm doing. And sometimes you have to, that Shakespeare's, he wasn't just a great writer, he was an incredible philosopher. Probably the most famous lines from Shakespeare are from Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. And that's a very profound question. But what follows that is much more profound. He said, after to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the minds of men to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and thus by opposing end them. You have to ask the question, and that's what this program is about, and that's what the movie is about, and that's what the book is about, and that's what all of it is about. to be or not to be? Am I going to be who I came into this world to be, and there's something inside of me that has always been calling me to it? Or am I going to allow the slings and arrows of an outrageous fortune that has been imposed upon me by others to dictate my dharma? That's really the question. And it's a question that you can answer and respond to and live with.
Do you have a definition for crisis? Like, what is a crisis?
It's a gift. It's a gift. Everything is. It's interesting you mentioned The Power of Intention, because I wrote that book in what you would call a crisis. My wife and I had separated. I was 60 years old. You don't break up when you're 60 and have 7 kids. You know, you do that in junior high school. And for about a year and a half, I was in the closest thing I've ever had to a depression, a clinical depression. Didn't want to get up, just couldn't figure it out. My wife had met somebody else, had moved in with them and so on. And my children encouraged me to just start writing again. They said, if you just write about it. And I really didn't want to write about it. But I had lost a lot of weight. People thought I was sick. People thought I was dying, and so on. And that book was just channeled to me. And I think in moments of crisis, what it teaches us is to become more compassionate. And compassion is at the heart of higher consciousness and enlightenment. The Dalai Lama said that if we could take every child on the planet and have them meditate on compassion for 1 hour a week, every child at the age of 5, in one generation we could eliminate all violence on earth. So that's how powerful he believes compassion to be. And I understood that, because The Power of Intention was a major shift for me. I began to look less flippantly and less egotistically at the world, and came from a place of inner grace or kindness, gentleness, love, what I call divine love. So that I've always felt that it is not always so important to just be in a state of gratitude when things go well, and when you're around people that smell good and that make you feel good and that look good, but it's the low points in our life, reminders that there's something inside of us that wants to have an outpouring of love. See, even the miser who loves his gold doesn't really love his gold because of the gold. The gold is just another thing. It doesn't have any love in it. It's just an object, a metal object. The reason that the miser loves his gold is because of the outpouring of love that he has for the gold. And that's true of everything and everyone. It's learning to have this outpouring of love, and you don't just have to have it for people and events, but you can have it for this microphone, and you can have it for the cameras, and you can have it for the wall, and the table, and the chair, and everything that you encounter. And I think for me, probably what you would call a crisis in my life was the diagnosis of leukemia 3 years ago. And when I first heard that word leukemia has cancer all around it. Cancer has a lot of fear all around it. And even if you aren't afraid to die, which I'm not, there's no point in being afraid of that. There's no point in being afraid of anything. You still, there's that inbred sort of psychic kind of awareness that cancer and fear go together, and so it was. It turned out to be one of the great blessings in my life. I encountered John of God down in Brazil, and was able to have just a magical experience around it. But what happened is, when I had this healing and leukemia was taken out of my body, it wasn't so much that leukemia was taken out. What was taken out was fear, and it was replaced by love. Almost immediately, not almost, immediately after I had what they call the removal of the sutures, a week after the the surgery, this remote surgery, I started feeling just love for everyone. I walked out of the room that morning, 7 days after the surgery, and I looked at my children and I just put my arms around them. I said, "You've just never looked more beautiful." And I looked at the ocean and it looked like just a big bowl of love soup. And the trees looked fluorescent, and every person that I walked by and looked at just became just objects of love.